introductory press conference to introduce their newest head coach, Nick Nurse. We have owner Josh Harris, general manager Daryl Morey, and Nick Nurse himself on hand over in Camden. We will send you out to that press conference right now.
We identified him early. Obviously, we've all competed with Nick, so we're glad you're on our side now. And we think, look, he's incredibly innovative, smart, and I think we think he's going to help us achieve our goal, which, as all of you know, and as Daryl, Elton, and everyone on our side knows, is to win an NBA title. Obviously we haven't achieved it. That sits really bad, as bad or worse with us as it does with you. But all we can tell you is that we're going to work tirelessly until we do. And I think Nick is going to be a big part of that success. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Daryl, and thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. So I just have one mission, along with Elton and our staff, and that's how do we get ourselves to a championship. That we're tirelessly towards that goal. We're pretty excited about this first step. Obviously, I have a lot of work to do from here, but having the chance to add Coach Nurse to the 76ers is, personally really cool, just because we've had a long-term relationship. He's been a championship coach at so many levels. I think at least five championships at all different stops that he's done to grind and continue to improve, including one that's really familiar with Sixers fans, obviously, beating us in that one series. So, he's someone who's a lifelong learner, always trying to find that next edge, and we're excited to be a partner with him as we work on the roster and into next season.
This is the first time I've been in front of the media since I left Toronto. So the first thing I'd like to say is that it was 10 great years in Toronto. Masai Ujiri and Larry Tannenbaum, Bobby Webster, everybody, they treated me really well there. It was a fascinating city, fascinating country, lots of good players, etc. So very, very grateful for those 10 years for sure. And saying that, I am super excited to be here. This is a very good team, first of all. The tradition, the city, as a sporting city, and of this organization is amazing, and I'm honored and humbled and excited to be the new head coach of the 76ers. Thank you.
Hey, how you doing, Nick? Over here. What's up, man? The question I have, I know this is a great city, whatever, but you had other opportunities, Milwaukee and Phoenix. What was the one thing that stood out to you with this roster? And I know Joel Embiid, but the one thing that made this the perfect job for you?
Well, there's several things you're evaluating. First of all, I know it's a good team because I've in the trenches trying to battle you guys a lot, and a pretty good rivalry, right? We saw each other a lot in playoffs and stuff as well. Certainly a big factor. And then it's I think what's most important is ownership. Just like the other side, you do your research and everything I hear is super positive. And I know Daryl and Daryl's track record of getting players and putting together a roster that can compete for the title, I think speaks for itself. And that's what made it a fairly easy decision in the end. Yep.
For the next question, just remind me your age.
Hi, Nick. Mike Sealski from the Philadelphia Inquirer. You took some criticism in Toronto for criticizing players, or at least reportedly criticizing players in public before you had spoken to them behind closed doors. How accurate was that, and do you think that's something you need to rectify?
Well, first of all, communication and relationships is the key to doing this job really well, right? And always communicate directly with the players on anything. If there's issues, or if there's schemes, or if there's improvement areas, or anything, be very direct and handle that kind of stuff one-on-one, face-to-face, sometimes in team setting. Communication is the key to being a successful head coach, and we'll continue to do that here.
Dan Gelston, the Associated Press. How you doing, Nick? How are you? You said you've been in this trenches with this team, but there's been something that hasn't quite been unlocked that's been able to get it past the second round. What do you feel that's been missing that you see when you're on the other side, and what do you feel you can bring to unlock that? How will you unlock that?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought on that is this team could be playing tonight, right? I think that along with some others in the Eastern Conference that probably are wishing they were getting ready to throw the ball up tonight, and that combination of staying healthy, the ball bouncing your way, figuring out the long grind that it is to go from the start of the playoffs to winning a title, all those things, are very difficult. Like, you gotta be able to do all that stuff. And as far as the rest of it, I look at it like this way: I don't really vibrate on the frequency of the past. Like, to me, when we get a chance to start and dig into this thing a little bit, it's going to be only focused on what we're trying to do going forward. That doesn't matter. Next season, whatever's happened for the last how many whatever years, doesn't matter to me. And it's similar to Toronto a little bit, right? That be kind of a clean slate for me. Just looking forward to how we can get it done from start to finish.
Hey, Nick, Gina Mizell from the Philadelphia Inquirer as well. Good to see you. For both you and Daryl, Daryl, you mentioned that you guys have a history together, obviously. Just can you take us back to when you guys first worked together with the Rockets organization in Rio Grande, maybe what that was like, and then why it made sense to reunite, basically a decade later?
Well, for me, I was coaching the Iowa Energy at the time in the old D League, now the G League, as my home state. But I was interested in going to work with Daryl once we started talking. I mean, there was a lot of kind of analytical things, innovative ideas, et cetera, and that kind of really triggered me. I thought it'd be a chance for me to grow as a coach. And, I can just remember some of the things leading in there. It was like, use that as like a laboratory. We're going to try this and try that. And I think that was kind of what I'd been doing. Some of the other places I'd been coaching, just trying things. And when they work, we kind of keep them in our toolbox. And when they don't work, we crumple them up and get rid of them right away. But he encouraged innovation and creativity and trying to find a better way to do things. And that's what triggered me to go there originally.
I think just thinking back at that time, we were looking for a lot of what we're looking for now in this search, which is a partner who you can define an objective and say, use their creative basketball mind to see how to achieve that, whether it be certain tactical things on the floor or certain ways to construct a roster that obviously everyone's fighting for the same cap, tax type resources where you have to fit everything in. Great coaches can help you unlock players that maybe can create value that other teams don't see or can't unlock, and that's the key. It's like, how do you get these players who can help in a partnership with the front office and the coach to achieve a greater objective.
Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers. Nick, just you were able to win a championship your first year in Toronto. You have two teams that are in the finals right now that have a lot of continuity, that have played together, coached, have the same coach. How do you kind of make up that gap, that continuity, trying to win a championship your first year in a new place?
Well, I think we will have some continuity on the floor, and I think that's probably the most important thing. As I study, I've studied the Sixers a lot in preparation for playing them, but as I do a deeper dive into studying them, I think it always comes down to this. I'm going to keep all the things that I think are really applicable and that they do really well. We're going to try to cut out some of the things that maybe we can improve on, and it'll kind of develop, from there. And that journey will start day one. and then it takes a bit to get to know each other, both coaches and staff knowing players and players knowing the coaches and staffs, and then we're just kind of constantly polishing and testing and moving, whatever it is, as we prepare to get to the end of of April and May and then June, hopefully, right? So I like that there's going to be some continuity. We know that, right? There's going to be plenty of guys that are under contract coming back, and then it's going to be our job as a staff to try to get them up to speed and build it as we go. Yeah.
I think winning a title in the first year as head coach is too hard. It probably can't be done.
Nick, hi. Don Bell, CBS News, Philadelphia. You were able to load manage Kawhi and Leonard, and obviously the Raptors, to a title in 2019. How might that experience with Kawhi help you with Joel?
Well, I think it'll help a lot. Like you said, the 18-19 season, we went into that with Kawhi, who hadn't played in a long time, so we knew there was going to be a load management is the term. I'm not sure it was the term at the time, but we knew there was basically a plan of how we were going to, we looked at the season in totality, and this is like what we think would be a good plan, kind of break it down month by month, and then kind of like everything else, as you're going, you kind of shift the path or change as more evidence or information becomes available to you, and go from there. But I think it's almost like a subset of a season when you've got a player like that. It is a long-term, season-long vision and plan you have to put together, and then you got to kind of build it up and adjust and change as you go. But I think that going through that with Toronto in 18-19 should be very valuable.
Hi, Nick. Dave Eram from KYW News Radio here in Philadelphia. I know you and Joel have expressed respect for one another in the media before. Keith the other day reported your meeting went well, but at the same time, Joel has taken some jabs at you in the media, the Nick Nurse route of talking to the referees. How do you think that you can make your relationship with Joel work during your time here? And then the second part to that question, given the success at times that you have had against him, what do you think you can do to take his level of success to that next level?
All right, that's a good question. A lot of stuff in there. First of all, I think that it's been an interesting experience coaching against Joel and on many different seasons, and I'll answer the last part of your question. Like, we threw everything almost I think you could possibly throw at a guy, because it was that hard for us to try to stop him, right? So we threw a lot at him. So at least I think that we can offensively say this is what we did and here's how we can beat it, and we've almost covered most things, right? So there's one part of that, but the rest of that, it's a little bit entertaining for me, because I understand there was some exchanges and things. I didn't even really, when you're out there and you're in the heat of really competing, I don't even really remember them, but I accidentally had my TV on yesterday and I saw a couple of them. They were pretty good. I was like, man, I don't even remember that, but now I know what everybody's talking about here a little bit. And then it kind of grew to such a for me anyway, a respect level of him. It was we'd throw one thing and literally even in that playoff series, a game later, he would adjust to it, and we couldn't do what we kind of were banking on this, that we could do, and he'd adjust to it. So, I guess again, it was a tremendous amount of respect level for me. And then, as far as the building the relationship, listen, I think he really competes, and he really wants to be great, and just it's a collaborative effort. Like here's how do you see it? Here's how I see it. Let's figure this out, and for me, I just want him to have as much success as possible, and that translate to team success as well. Yep.
Nick, Howard Eskin, Sports Radio, WIP, right here, or to Daryl Trent Krim. But you talked about philosophies, about getting this team to win a championship. The team doesn't seem to be able to get past the second round. You figured out a way. Can you be more specific what you can do with this team, with the core you have, whether James Harden's back or not, to win a championship?
Well, the first thing is, and this is again a little bit of experience or historical background, is some teams, there's you guys have mentioned the second round to me twice already, and we're going to hit that head on. Like, we know, like, we're judged on how we play in the playoffs. Like, it was the same in Toronto, that we hadn't played that well, and certain players hadn't played that well, and all those kind of things. So the reality is that's the truth. So I would imagine from day one we're gonna talk about that, and that we're gonna try to attack that. We're gonna have to face it, and we're gonna have to rise above it. That's the mentality part, I think, that you're gonna have to take, right? And then there's all kinds of other things, like can we tactically do things? Can we adjust on the fly? Can we improve as the season goes on? And that's a goal of a coach, is as you go, you want to keep getting better, and then you get to the playoffs and you're one team, and that's a 2-month-long journey, and you got to be better at the end of those 2 months. And
do you want James Harden back?
Pardon me?
Do you want James Harden back?
James Harden's a great player.
That didn't answer the question.
Well, I would say this, is that James has a decision to make, and I'd be very happy if he came back. Yeah.
And Darryl, one quick question for you. You said when you were here before, when you announced relieving Coach Rivers, that you wouldn't let players be deciders and involved in the process. Well, it was reported, and obviously, apparently, there's nobody's denied it. Joel and Nick met. So you did let players get involved in the process, and if that's the case, why?
Yeah, I would say, look, I think for a coach to succeed in this league, he has to have, like you mentioned, great relationship with his players, especially his top players. Coach Nurse has talked to all the top players on the team. But in terms of like the final decision on coach, that was mine.
Nick, Dave Murphy with the Philadelphia Inquirer. Game of basketball has changed a lot over the course of your coaching career. You've been at the cutting edge of that at times. Your best player is a big man now. How do you see that fitting into kind of the current modern NBA and your offense, and what can you do to kind of make Joel Embiid part of a functional championship offense?
Yeah, I think the game is constantly changing. First of all, I think that you've got to always be trying to look at, like, maybe how things are shifting or how things are shifting back, et cetera. And there's a stretch maybe where people will say, well, the big man is out. Well, a pretty good big man playing tonight for the whole thing, right? I mean, I think there might be a swing back, maybe the other way. I don't know, but you got to kind of pay attention to all that stuff. But for me, like, Joel has a lot of attributes. First of all, defensively, very, very good, right? And then offensively, he's very, very skilled. And again, it's a little bit early, but I think that once it starts unfolding and we start learning each other and all those kind of things, we're just going to try to max it out, right? Whatever that means. I can't sit here and tell you tactically what that means today, but we're gonna certainly try to put him in situations where he's going to be super dominant.
I mean, with regard to Jokic, who you mentioned,
Yep.
I mean, both. I think yes, he's a big man, but if you look at him and Butler, they're also both kind of facilitators. Is that something that you think Joel needs to incorporate a little more into his game?
Well, I think that a couple things. The short answer to that is yes. I think he's got the ability to do that. I think it's part of what I historically like to do as well. I also think that there's a lot of changing defenses now, a lot more than you've probably seen, 6 or 7 years ago. So you've got to be able to combat and be ready for all those. There's a lot more switching, all those things going on. And we just got to be ready for all of it. Yeah.
Hey, Nick. Right here.
Sorry.
Kyle Newbeck, Philly
Kyle.
voice. Tyrese Maxey, probably one of your clearest paths to any kind of big internal improvement. I guess from afar, what has your impression of him been, and then what do you see as the next step that you can help him take to be that sort of maybe all-star level player?
Yeah, first of all, from afar, playing against him was very difficult. Just the sheer speed and quickness in that he has it was tough, to game plan against him. Just like sometimes you just can't beat the speed. You can't come up with anything to beat the speed. But what he did, what our experience was is it wasn't just speed and layups. Then he started shooting the ball really well, and then he started making little further layups, and then a little further. We were trying our best to get him away from the rim, but he'd still make a lot of those. So I think I agree with you. First of all, your thought and your question is he's got a tremendous chance to improve and take a step forward, and from all indications, and that he's really hungry to do so. Good worker, good person, really wants to get better. There's some specifics, I would say, being more of a creator. Said about what is creating? Well, creating is you're scoring or you're drawing more people than one, and then you're creating for others. So can he make the reads, all the reads? And I think that's like the first place I would start offensively is getting him, more reps in the pick and roll so he can make the reads to all the other players on the floor depending on what he sees, right? Yeah.
Obviously, defensively, a lot of your guards you had success with in Toronto, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, not necessarily the biggest guys. And your system in Toronto heavily predicated on wings and guards kind of pinching the paint, closing out. I guess a guy like Maxey, who his defensive reputation hasn't been, the best. What is the path to turning a smaller guard into, an impactful defensive player?
Yeah. You used a good word there, impactful. You gotta impact the ball a lot as a small player. Like get into it, get up underneath people, get over screens, impact the body of the ball handler. That's one thing. I would say that we didn't really think that he wasn't a good defender. We thought he was. Again, we thought with that quickness and speed and all those things that our guy he could get up the floor a little bit and disrupt rhythm and all those kind of things. So we'll see. But yeah, we're gonna. One of the things is we like to guard pretty hard, and especially the ball. So we will certainly be diving into that and probably working on that with him. Yeah.
Hey, John Clark with NBC Sports Philadelphia. You talked about being able to talk to Joel. Have you had a chance to talk to James Harden since you've taken over?
I have.
And what would be your sell job to him about why maybe you can unlock something with him staying here, him and Joel and the rest of the team?
Yeah, listen, I think that we didn't get into that, right? When we talked, I am going to sit down, as I am with all the guys. I'm going to go sit down with them all one-on-one, face-to-face here shortly. But listen, I think that winning is always the sell, right? Can we be good enough to win it all? That's got to be a goal of his. And if it isn't, then he should stay here and play for us, because I think there's a possibility of that.
Did you take the job hoping and expecting that he would be back, or not sure and not expecting that he would come back?
I took the job because of these two guys and their track record of all of it. Listen, I think that, again, I'll get a deeper dive and deeper look at what we actually have and are gonna have going forward later in the summer. Like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to go super deep into what we have until we know what we have. I'll go super deep into guys we know that are coming back and what skills and things that they may need to develop between now and training camp. But no, I took the job because of these two guys and the players. Yep.
Got two more. We'll start with Kai Carlin and Austin Krell.
Hey, Nick. Kai Carlin, Sixers Wire. Fred VanVleet described you as a different guy
It's just in terms of like the schemes and things that you kind of come up with. What's it going to take to kind of get like these guys to maybe buy into maybe an unorthodox scheme or anything like that, like in the middle of a game?
Yeah, just like all of it. Again, it's a collaborative effort. The different, unique, something they've never done or I've never done goes to them and explain to them as to why we think it might work, and then they've got to kind of to buy it, and then they've got to go do it. And if it doesn't work and it's a really bad idea, like I said, we're going to crumple it up pretty quick and move on to something else. But if it does, we kind of put it over here, and sometimes we call our playoff toolbox, something we've tried that worked on a certain guy that we may need down the road. And it really starts with asking them to be open-minded. Like be open-minded here, and we're going to probably do some things that you haven't done before. And I know that because sometimes we don't even as a coaching staff know what they are. They present themselves with a certain group of guys against a certain opponent in a certain situation. So it's kind of open-mindedness and a collaborative effort, really. Yep.
Hey, Nick. Austin Krell, thepaintedlines.com. Obviously, you're pretty new to this situation in Philly, but from what you do know about the personnel that you do have, do you envision it in more of a time to integrate defense or offense in terms of what you want to do?
Well, I certainly believe in you got to play both ends, right? That both ends are really important, and I think the style that ends up being the style for the team will be based on how we feel as a staff. Like again, we like to guard. I think it's really important. Our coaching staff is going to try to put great game plans on both sides of the ball together each and every night. We want to score efficiently. I think that is always like can we create more possessions in our opponent? Can we take efficient shots? Can we have low turnovers? Can we get on the offensive glass? All those things that make an efficient offense. And it looks different for every team, and sometimes it looks different for the same team from season to season. So I think that's all kind of TBD. Yeah.
Last question, Tim Bontemps.
Daryl, there were a lot of really high-profile, successful coaches on the market. What stood out about Nick in terms of why he was the choice to best lead Philly forward?
Yeah, I think spoke about what we were looking for a couple weeks ago. Obviously, championship pedigree at multiple levels is a big factor. His creativity, like I mentioned before, the fact that a partner in how to create results together, I think is a big factor. I think he sort of checks every box: relationships with players, working with star players, tactics. Someone that people in the league want to play for. I mean, it's a pretty long list, and we thought he was a pretty special candidate. And I appreciate Josh and David, giving us the resources to help make it happen. I think this is just one step towards a championship, but we think it's an important step.
And Nick, you've talked a bunch about people have asked different ways about you being a creative coach. Obviously, in Toronto, you guys had a very different kind of roster, longer, more athletic, didn't have a guy like Joel in the middle necessarily. Are you excited to have an opportunity to work with a guy like that and to kind of do things a little bit different way than you were in Toronto?
Well, I think, again, that's what we did in Toronto. We're just trying to maximize what the roster looked like. I mean, we really had to generate turnovers and get out and score in transition, all those things. 2018-19 was a different roster. We did have, Gasol, and so, we played a different style and a different defense. And, again, it's gonna be like whatever's best for this team, right? Whatever's best for this team, and to try to get them to be the best they can be.
Thank you.